Now, with everything that's been happening in My Hero Academia with Deku and Shigaraki, they have decided this go around for this week to fill us in on some of the things that's happening in a different battlefield. Now, I will have to say though, this battlefield might be just a tad bit worse than it is between Deku and Shigaraki. So we get in between the battle at the hospital between Koji, Shoji, and Spinner. Now, at first I thought this battle wouldn't be that big a deal, but when they are up against, the police and them have about 200 people, yet the ones that are actually attacking the hospital are, 15,000 strong, it ends up being a close to one-sided match. So, this was a lot rougher than I thought it was going to be. But before we get into it, make sure you guys like the video, make sure you guys are subscribed. And of course, if you do want to help out the channel, you're more than welcome to check out Patreon, where we have the full reaction for each episode, as well as gameplay that will be soon put on there in the future. One of the first things I want to say about this episode is it felt really short. I was really captivated and enthralled in it. It's like, okay, they are so oppressed because it's 200 versus 15,000 that I'm like, how in the world are they going to end up fighting that off? I will have to say there were some moments that were a little weird because I don't know if it was just the art direction, but there was moments where the crowd of people were surrounding them and attacking them and pulling them off. Yet then the next frame, they don't have anyone around them. I was like, well, that's a little weird. The sheer push and pull back. It's like, okay, are they getting overrun or are they not getting overrun? But let's talk about our boy here, Koji. Koji popped off. You haven't really been noticing in these last episodes, whenever we've been talking about these heroes, they're all of a sudden get some new power or power up. Anima was always one of the ones, he's supposed to be the sweetest and nicest person. They've really built him up. He talks to animals, he's shy, he's sweet. They've really got this character on him. Now, granted, he is kind of like a background character, really, with the whole class. Like, if there was a tier list of all the classes and the classmates, he's definitely on the bottom because they don't really use him as much as possible. They're just like, okay, he's just a nice, sweet student and, can't harm a fly, just relegate him to the back and then let's move along with some of the other more important characters. Well, they're taking center stage. We got Koji and Shoji, some background characters that we're really getting their backstory and trying to understand what makes them tick. And I want to start here with Koji first because he definitely has some development here where he had these horns. When they started showing like his skull, like his head was cracking, I'm like, what in the world's happening here? And he's got these horns. So now he no longer has to talk to animals. He can, with his horns, share his feelings to the animals. So it's not necessarily that he's sharing his thoughts with them, but he can kind of direct the animals just a little bit more than just talking with them, which is amplified by him getting angry, which of course is a whole turnaround from the whole series. Like, this guy is supposed to be the nicest, cutest, sweetest thing, and now he's like anger. But as long as that anger is directed carefully, as in the backstory with his mother. So it's like, okay, all right, that's cool. I can see what they're going with this. But I will have to say, for those that didn't get the reference, I think the funniest thing of all is that his power that he ends up using is directing birds, and he calls the power Hitchcock birds. So for those that are not in the know, that may not have understood, that is a reference to an old movie. I believe it's a 1963 movie called The Birds, and it was actually directed by Hitchcock, because it was like birds are murdering people all of a sudden, and then like the birds are bad guys, and it's specifically like crows. I remember seeing it when I was very young, and I thought it was like the funniest thing. It's like, oh, birds pecking at people and killing them. I just thought it was an actual funny reference. It's like, oh, I see what you did there. Okay, I get you. All right, now for the rest of the discussion, we're going to get a little bit serious here because the battle between Spinner and Shoji really started to get intense as they're kind of I guess you could say, fighting for the future of the heteromorphs. There's no way to not address the elephant in the room. They are really representing a lot of things that is happening in our current world with racism and or the prejudice against people for the way that they look. Now, granted, in their world, it has to deal with the fact that if they look more animalistic or just non-human-like, and they get treated in a certain way. Now, both Shoji and Spinner have had bad experiences due to the way that they look. First things first, I want to talk about Spinner. I kind of feel for Spinner because they kept showing him in his room, kind of looking at the screen, and how he just kind of didn't want to go outside, that he was acting a certain way. He kind of looked up to Stain because he saw that Stain, who, for all intents and purposes, I believe is human-like, even though he does wear a lot of stuff around him, rags and such. We can't really tell that much, but he does look more humanoid. Stain, of course, given his ideals to Spinner, Spinner takes those and now is fighting for the head of the heteromorphs for the Liberation Front and has an army about 15,000 deep that I kind of feel sorry for him because, one, he says how he was persecuted and was sprayed with bug spray, which was weird because I'm like, he looks like a lizard. I don't know why they use like bug spray on him. And then All For One is using him. In this fight alone, you can see where, of course, Spinner is bulked up and huge, but it seemed like his brain wasn't bulked up as well. It's kind of like the issue with dinosaurs. Like, dinosaurs were big and huge, but they have very small brains. You could kind of tell that, you know, he's not the same Spinner he was when he was normal sized. And that with people just talking to him, he kind of is like not all there. And it's like, man, I feel bad for him because the aggression that he has against society is being taken and directed towards a goal, thanks to All For One. So All For One's like, all right, you don't really have a quirk other than the way you look. Here, I'll give you some quirks, which of course, you know, are already double-edged swords. He bulked him up and gave him the scales that are like razor-like. It literally looked like swords were coming out of him for a second. I thought the sword that he has, I'm like, wait, he has swords inside of him too? But the change that he wants to see in society is not necessarily gonna be the change that he gets when he's trying to attack the hospital thanks to All For One's direction. Now, granted, near the end of the episode, it seemed like he started to get some sense together, so I don't know if they're going to go into the fact that, oh, maybe his brain started small, or he started not understanding or not being there, but as the fight's going on, he's getting smarter and more intelligent. We'll have to see how it works out next week, because it looks like next week is a continuation of this fight. In the beginning, it kind of looked like, oh, he's not all there. Okay, that's why they have this spider crab looking spokesman in the background trying to direct the people, if you will, and trying to spread hate. Now, Shoji's had a life maybe even more intense than Spinner. Like, you could see the actual scars are on him. Like, he has scars like on the back of his neck, which was so weird. And then of course the scars that's on his mouth. It kind of shows why he got those scars, which his backstory is kind of sad because he was just kind of by a river one day and he sees like a humanoid girl like in the rapids and he uses his quirk to save her. And it seems like when he went back to town, and probably what happened is the girl let everyone know that, hey, he's my hero, he saved me. And then next thing you know, the town beats him, throws rocks in his house, says that he shouldn't come outside. What are you doing outside? He gets these scars on his face and gets, all these lacerations. And it's still there for the girl. Like, the girl cries again. It's like, man, I'm sorry that this happened to you. And that's just cold. It could have not only killed the girl, could have killed him, but thanks to his quirk, really the only one that could, because he was able to stretch out his arms for so long, saves her, and this is the repayment he gets. Yes, he could have been a bad guy. He could have went on the side. It's like, you know what? Humans treated me this way, so I'm going to be the bad guy and treat humans the way that I was treated. he could have been like that, but even he was talking to his friends and saying, hey, you know what? I look at the list of heroes who look like villains, and he feels like he's one of those that, could look like a villain. And he kind of is like, yeah, but I'm a hero and I'm trying to be on the side of good. There's a lot of parallels. Like, honestly, I so see the parallels between them, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. Like how he's trying to do things peacefully and how Spinner in this regard is trying to do things through violence with this whole mob behind him. It hit home even harder when Shoji shared these powerful words. Like, I don't know if anyone else really got hit as hard as I did when he said these words. Like, I'm going to read them verbatim, one to one. With the bodies you were blessed with, what do you want to protect? Don't let them take advantage of your scars. Next time your children might be the target. Don't turn into people who just want revenge. Like, whoa, like, really? Like, that, if you really look at those words, line by line, like, that hits home. And I honestly thought that those were going to be the words that changes the crowd around, and you can see where it started to. But then, all of a sudden, Spinner gets his cognition back, be able to actually talk with some sense, and then rallies the crowd to attack the hospital yet again. So I thought it was going to be like, oh, he changed the hearts of everyone go home, but it can't be that easy. So, there must be a next week's episode in this regard. So yeah, next week it seems they're actually going to go into the hospital and do some fighting there. And for all I know, Shoji could have some even more powerful words next week with the crowd and might be able to change or sway their hearts. We shall see. But yeah, Shoji really came through and said some really powerful things. And as an African American myself, I can kind of relate to how they're feeling in a regard to both sides of the coin. But of course, I am more inclined to side with Shoji and how this kid, is trying to change over 15,000 people and the way they are thinking, hating and rioting, to the point that the police, all of a sudden are starting to pull out guns and start shooting. And it's like, oh, that's never a good thing. That's never a good thing when you introduce even more violence to that regard. But man, it's this episode definitely, although like I said, it was a very quick episode, it felt very quick, there was really some powerful words done here. Between Spinner and Shoji and their fight in the battle and what they're fighting for, which is an important issue that they're fighting for. So don't get me wrong, I kind of can understand where they're coming from. Spinner is really doing it on the wrong side of things and being taken advantage of by people that are more powerful than him, in this case, All For One. Even though his message might be right, the way he's doing it is wrong. Overall, I think it was a good episode, although, there wasn't, I guess, a lot of substance in the aspect that I think a lot of people are looking for, especially compared to last week's episode, which was absolutely amazing. We got to backtrack here and fill in on what's happening on other battlefields, which this one is like, okay, yeah, they're in trouble. So I like to see more of this one. Definitely let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Am I on base, off base? I would love to hear from you guys. In the meantime, please take care of yourselves, be safe, check out the Patreon if you haven't already, and make sure, like I said, like the video, and please don't be a stranger. Please subscribe, because I would love to see you guys more in the future as more anime keeps popping out, and we'll keep popping out the reviews. In the meantime, have a good one. Goodbye for now.
This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon.